Pro. I am your host, Quaōcha Woody. Thanks for joining. VP Media Pro podcast takes a holistic approach to encouraging and educating aspiring entrepreneurs on the life cycle of business ownership. Listeners will hear open discussions from business experts and community leaders on different business success topics that range from leadership, trends, business planning, work-life balance, money, marketing, mindset, and so much more. Today's episode is Life Insurance for Entrepreneurs, What You Need to Know. I have the pleasure of introducing a certified licensed insurance agent who was born in San Diego, California, and currently residing in Richmond, Virginia. VP Media Pro's guest is the owner and founder of A New Financial, and his goals today are to equip startups with everything there it is to know when it comes to life insurance and so much more. I want to welcome to VP Media Pro Insurance Bay, Calvin Royster. Hey, Calvin, how are you doing today?
Hey, I'm doing good. Thank you for that warm introduction. I appreciate you throwing Insurance Bay in there.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm so excited to have you on the show. I know that every time that we are together, we always have a good time. And so I am just so excited. I learned so much when it comes to insurance whenever we are, talking to one another. So I'm really excited to have you on the show so that you can share with entrepreneurs everything they need to know about life insurance and so much more. Can you tell us a little bit more about your background? Like before you became an entrepreneur and you started A New Financial, what was it that you did?
So my professional background, I've always been in insurance. Mostly I've always been in insurance, but most of my career I've been in insurance. I was a bit of a journeyman. So I bounced around from company to company and learned and took from those experiences and formulated A New Financial. So so I would, if I had to sum it up, I would say sales and marketing for the last decade or so.
Wow. Okay. Okay. So I'm sure before we get into your name, Insurance Bay, because trust me, I'm sure listeners want to know how did you come up with that name? Can you tell us a little bit more about A New Financial? Like what sparked the development of this company as well?
So, kind of going back to what I was saying earlier, when I went from company to company, I was working with all different types of insurance products and working with all different types of people. And one of the things that I realized very quickly was our community, there was opportunity to serve our community a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the real big breakthrough for me was I was with one particular life insurance company, and they worked almost exclusively with seniors. And there was a lot of, when I had those conversations with them and their families, there's a lot of shoulda, coulda, woulda. I wish I'd known this. I should have done that. I could have done this if you had this conversation with me. And I realized that we need to have those conversations, like our peer group, millennials. We need to have some of these conversations now because I've already seen what it looks like on the other end. And so I said, you know what? Let me go out and branch out and do something on my own that allows me to speak directly to my peer group and offer options that work specifically for our needs.
So what did you discover, like, as you were doing your research about millennials? What was it that you saw that they needed?
I saw a lot of opportunity. I saw that, if we may get into this a little bit more later, but, my passion is bringing balance to the wealth gap, right? And so I saw that millennials, we have everything in front of us. We have access to the technology that our parents and our grandparents may not have had, and the information, I should say, access to the information through technology. We have long lifespans ahead of us, where a lot of us are budding in our careers and still have full of our accumulation years in front of us. So there's a lot in front of us. And I saw that, that is the biggest opportunity. And if we took a hold of the information now, we could literally change the dynamic of our and trajectory of our entire community. So that's really when I started putting all that together. And this took time and research and some experience to figure out. But once I figured that, I said, oh, we've got to take this and run with it.
Yeah, absolutely. So what communities are you specifically serving?
I work mainly with the Black millennial. That's my core focus. My entire marketing messaging is geared towards the Black millennial. just because that hit closest to home for me.
Absolutely. So are you specifically in Virginia, or have you spread your wings elsewhere?
Yeah, so I do work close to home. Virginia is the home base, but I'm licensed in multiple states. So I want to say now,
Okay.
as of today, I believe I'm in like 9 or so different states. So it's not exclusive to Virginia, but Virginia is where I do a lot of my business.
Absolutely. That's cool. That's amazing. What are some of the challenges that the Black millennial entrepreneurs face when it comes to insurance? Like what type of resources do they need to propel themselves forward?
I would say, as far as challenges go, I would think, if anything, it is more so just the information and education around it. You know, we could put ourselves in really good positions if we know what's out there. And I think that's the
Mhm.
biggest obstacle is learning, okay, how can I set myself up for success? How can I, especially when you're a beginning entrepreneur, you're just starting up, you're in that beginning phase, and you're early on, you have so much to think about. Insurance is one of the things that may or may not make the list, but it's one of those
Exactly.
things that we need to have in place because it's going to help. It's going to not only give us the peace of mind, but it can also give us the means to make sure that if something does come up, our business doesn't have to go under.
Absolutely. So most of the time when you hear about insurance, you think about car insurance, you may even think about home insurance, and even life insurance. So are those some of the services that you have underneath your umbrella as well, that you serve in the Black entrepreneur community too?
Yeah, so I do. I'm a full service broker, and
Okay.
so that's a fancy way of just saying that I have multiple lines of insurance and multiple options for each individual line. So life, disability is really good to look at for entrepreneurs.
Why do you say that? Sorry to cut you off. Why do you say that disability insurance is the best for entrepreneurs?
Sure. So with the disability, that's important because many of us, especially if we're looking at early on startups, we're oftentimes the only employee. Everything rides on what happens to us. Now, if in the scenario something happens to us as we're going out there, we're grinding, we're going to go get it, right? We become
Hmm.
disabled. And sometimes I think we're thinking, oh, we're in a wheelchair. Sometimes there's a lot in between a wheelchair and being crippled, so to speak, and what they'll pay out for disability. But something happens and we can't get up and go get it. What happens to our income? If we're the only employee and we're shut down for any period of time, that's money. So in a sense, it really is protecting your money and your revenue because you're allows life to happen, so to speak.
Hmm.
So that's why I definitely am really big on disability for entrepreneurs. You've got the health insurance, auto, home. I mean, it goes on. Basically, any type of insurance that you would need, I have access to.
Awesome. So this is like a one-stop shop.
Absolutely, absolutely, definitely one stop shop.
Yes. Okay. So when it comes to insurance, I know I was reading one day, according to The Guardian and multiple reputable sources, Black firms are twice as likely to be rejected by bank loans.
Mm.
So is life insurance, what are your thoughts on that? And also, my second question is life insurance another way for Black owned businesses to fund their startup?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's one of those things where if you, again, going back to the wealth gap, if you look at the disparity, right, and if you look at where Black people as we are standing as a community, it doesn't really matter which chart we look at. We're on it at the bottom. There's no way that's by accident. So I think that kind of goes into your point of the rejections on the business loans. But for some reason we can get auto loans left and right. Anyway, it just is sidebar. And I'll get back to it. But
Okay.
it amazes me that in a place where we are an economic system that says the more value you add, the more you're worth.
Hmm.
How is it in a place that a community of people have added the most value, arguably, in comparison to any other group here, but yet we are dead last on everybody's chart when it comes to assets and wealth?
Going into that, what you just said, you made a really good point. What do you think is the solution for us as far as what is your idea for us to close the gap?
And I think it's going to take a multitude of strategies and options, but life insurance is a big part of it. And I think it's one
Mhm.
that's utilized for sure. And that's where my passion comes into play. I
Okay.
mean, there's real estate, there's anything that is equitable for us, where we can build equity, we can have ownership over. That's what we need to get to. I mean, home ownership is huge, but not everybody is in a position to buy a home or is interested in buying a home. Businesses, not everybody wants to build a big business or is building one that's equitable. We've got stocks and things like that. Not everybody knows the nuances of the market or is comfortable with those risks. Everybody has a life, and I can get anybody insured when it comes to life insurance. So when it comes to that, it's one of those things I think I said it is underutilized. And if we learn the power in how to use life insurance strategically, it's one that we can literally maximize off of something that's guaranteed to happen. So we're guaranteeing, it's an inevitable thing, and it's something that we can turn into something for our good.
Absolutely. What do you think are some ways that we can actually use life insurance for our benefit?
So, I mean, the list it goes on and on and on. And when you really
Tell
see,
it.
there's so many different things you can do. But I think, at the surface level, high level view, there's what's called living benefits is probably a good place to start. So living benefits allows us to not only benefit, and I talk about this a lot with our peer group, especially because we're younger, we're going to live forever is a lot of what we all think, and so talking about, okay, well, when you pass, okay, well, that's 50 years from now, Calvin. I don't want to hear that. So
Right.
let's talk about what we want to talk about. So let's talk about some living benefits. So living benefits are benefits that pay out to you when you're alive still. But it's something that is stuff that's more common. It's things like heart attack, cancer, stroke, coma. You become ill and are disabled. Things like that are what you can use life insurance again to benefit now. And how that applies to a business owner is, again, as you're out there, you're going, you're grinding, you're building. If something changes in your health to where you cannot build and you need time to recover, what's happening to your company, your business, your revenue, your bottom line, if you're the direct impact of that, even if you may have a small staff of employees, that can be very beneficial for you.
That's actually awesome. And so, how much coverage do you think does an entrepreneur need? Because, as you mentioned before, getting started in business, we have our own list of services that cost money. We have our own list of expenses, right? And as you mentioned, I speak to tons of entrepreneurs, if you probably have spoken to too.
Yeah.
And within the conversation, I'm pretty sure they rarely mention insurance as an expense,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
So, my question is, and do you think that this is the reason why they don't? It's because of the lack of knowledge, and also because of affordability. Their money is already tight and is already placed into marketing, branding, advertisement, all those things, and even assistance to help them, admin, all different kinds of costs, cost of goods, all that stuff, rent maybe. But when it comes to insurance, is that something that is affordable?
Yeah, definitely. I think as far as affordability, most entrepreneurs I think would be surprised at how much it costs to get insurance. And again, it
Mhm.
varies by your need and what we're looking for as far as coverage goes. But yeah, early stage, your needs may not be very high as far as the amount of coverage you may need. So again, that plays into the affordability. There's a multitude of things that you'd want to look into, but I get it when you're early on. There's a lot that you're looking at. For example, I was speaking with a new entrepreneur. He's actually looking to get into insurance, and we were just talking and going through some advice and things like that. And one of their first things in mind, they wanted to go get an office space. And I said, whoa,
Mm.
whoa, 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 that's a great idea, but you should use that money for your marketing budget. Do you really need an office right now? And so it's just things like that, that as an early stage entrepreneur, just being mindful of, okay, you have expenses and we just got to prioritize what do you need now versus what you can put off until later. But insurance is one of those things that should be prioritized and move up on the list, because that's something that could change at any point in time.
Yeah, absolutely. So when it comes to insurance, you just mentioned something online. So we're moving to online, and some of us are already online.
Yeah.
Do you still need insurance running an e-commerce business, online e-commerce business?
Absolutely, because the whole purpose of insurance is to protect against risks and exposures. And so, even if online you have risks and exposures,
Mhm.
they're different. Obviously, you may not need a policy that covers for space that you rent and things like that, depending on how you're set up. But you definitely want something that could help protect against somebody trying to sue you for, whatever, maybe false claims, maybe misrepresented a product for whatever issue that they may come up from as far as lawsuit goes and things like that. But definitely there's options for online e-commerce.
Okay, yeah, that's something that I've always been interested in, especially since, again, everyone is moving, majority of businesses are moving to online. There's some that still brick and mortar still exists. Um, and so, that was just a question that, I had. What are some of the steps to obtaining business insurance? Is that an easy process? Is it difficult to obtain?
So it's not difficult in the sense that you have to go through a lot to get it necessarily.
Okay.
It does really come down to your industry and what you're doing. My people love to get real creative sometimes, and so we have you all present some interesting cases for me to go find insurance for. But when it's all said and done, it's not difficult on the consumer's end. And as far as, again, the industry, what you're trying to do, and what your trade is, that can impact what it's going to be, what it's going to cost, the type that you can get, and things like that. But normally there's a solution out there for you.
Speaking of creativity, you got to tell us a story or two. So, what was the interesting case that you had to put insurance on?
So this brother, he did, he has a company, that is one particular company that it's basically two complete opposite companies under one company.
Okay.
And for that reason, finding one place that would essentially cover two companies under one company was very difficult. And
Okay.
so, long story short, we ended up having to get a couple of different policies all together to do it. We couldn't do it under one; it just wasn't working. But that was one of those things where, he does a little this and does a little that and puts it together under one.
Okay.
Like, can we get it covered? I'm like, we will do our best.
Okay. Well, that's good to know. So you have like umbrella policies too. So like for a company that has one big company and they have subsidiaries, you can provide insurance for that too.
Absolutely, absolutely. Even if it's and sometimes, just to be transparent, I'm not always paid on all this stuff. I'm going to find is probably the best way to put it. Even if it comes down to, I have to refer it out, I'll still do the legwork and the research just for the sake
Okay.
of making sure that you're taken care of, and that you're getting what you're looking for. So even if it's outside of me to get it, I'll still make that connection. But yeah,
Yeah.
if you come to me asking for help with insurance, we're gonna do our best to get that for you.
Yeah, absolutely. And why do you think business legacies? Let's go into long-term thinking.
Okay.
So as a startup, they're getting started in their business. They have, most startups have minimal capital. They're looking to build their customer base and looking to be super competitive in the marketplace. So long term, for those who are in the expansion phase of their business, they've been around for quite some time. They're, maintaining that presence in the market. Now, the goal for a small business owner is, or just for any entrepreneur business owner, is to think long term. So, what about business legacy and succession? Is that important? Is that something that you talk about too as an insurance expert? Is that something that you can assist with?
To an extent, yes, I can assist
Okay.
with. As far as business legacy, absolutely. We need to get back to having that business within the family that our kids can grow into. Ultimately, some businesses are designed to sell out of. We build them up just for the sake of selling them, but we've got to hold on to some of these and allow our kids. And it goes back to the equitable factor, having equity in something, have a stake in something, have something that will be left for somebody past ourselves, right? And so I think that's one of the things that we can do. And again, going back to the specifics of our community and our peer group, we can't lead. Oftentimes we do side hustles, which I'm not knocking. Like, there's a place for them for sure, but we can't leave. You can't leave a gig job. You know what I mean? For your child. You can't.
Mhm.
They can't assume your Uber role. That's like, so getting back to something that we can put our hands on ourselves, build up, and then pass on. And as far as what that looks like, a lot of times, you definitely want to make sure that the legal side of it is in order. And that's why I said, it's up to an extent of what I can help with. But having, those directives in place, like your wills, your trust, having a directive that says, when it's my time, this is what's going to happen next. This is how I'm factoring in my company with the plan I have for my family. So,
Mm.
of course, having an attorney and things like that could play big for an entrepreneur.
Absolutely. So I know we're talking about business insurance, but I understand that you have a multitude of different services, right? Quality services that you provide to an entrepreneurial one-stop shop. So as we talked about early on in the conversation, Black firms have a hard time with getting approved by the banks. And honestly, so when it comes to business longevity, according to stats, and I'm pretty sure you already know, 30% of small business owners will fail by year three, 50% by year five, and 70% by year 10. But and 10% will fail within the first 12 months of them going into business. Well, for a Black firm, for a Black owned business, that number is 8 out of 10. So 80% will fail within the first 12 months. That is huge. And one of the reasons why, of course, as I talk about, is marketing and also capital is some of the few of the reasons why. So speaking of capital, is how can insurance be used as a tool to assist with capital? Because I know we all used to, going to the banks, to get approved for a loan when it comes to a business, and we do the venture capitalist way. We do crowdfunding. We have, our family to give us monetary gifts, to help us, or we have the gigs, the side hustles that you were talking about. We even some of us are even still working a 9 to 5 just to pay for our business as we are building it on a part-time basis. So please, share what are some benefits as far as having insurance, and how can we use insurance for capital gain?
Sure. So when it comes to life insurance specifically, you can absolutely use it for your business and funding your business. So as far as it goes at a high level view, you can essentially get a policy, you'll pay into it, and over time, you're building equity within that policy that you can then in turn use and leverage as capital for your business. So what that looks like is, instead of going to, let's say, you're starting a business, or you're planning on starting a business in the next couple of years, and you say, what, I know I'm going to need funds just in case, maybe payroll might get tight, or I might need it for inventory, or whatever your business needs may be. If we're planning ahead, we can actually set this type of policy and build into it. And instead of going to a bank and saying, hey, will you qualify me, even because we already talked about and hit on our approval rates aren't as successful. So, instead of relying on the bank and hoping that you have good credit, you may not be able to go get a loan under your business name. the other factors that other ways you may go get money, like a personal loan or credit cards, things like that, those may or may not be an option. But as you build this policy, you can actually borrow against the policy and very favorable terms for you. And what I mean by that is typically the policies will have an interest rate of 4 to 5%, and the terms they pay back are incredible because let's say you've got about a year to pay that, and let's say for whatever reason you're unable to pay back the principal of it. So to give you some numbers, let's say you want to borrow $3,000. You only pay back the 4 or 5% interest on that $3,000 within that first year. And after that, the principal of that $3,000, you've got as long as you want to pay it back. Versus, a traditional loan where you've got, 3 or 4 years to pay it back, and it's this, that, and the other, and a lot higher interest rate. But along the way, the entire time, because you didn't pull the money out of the policy, your money is still growing at whatever the agreed upon term is that it's growing at. So your money is growing while you're using it to use it for your business to help you grow more money. So you got money growing in multiple ways, and it didn't really cost you much other than the small interest rate that you paid back.
Wow. Is the small interest rate, has that been impacted by the pandemic?
So yeah, I would say that as far as that goes, I know that they recently came out with an adjustment. Insurance companies basically saying, hey, we can't keep up with what we were saying we could do before. So in certain type of policies, they've actually lowered the interest rate that they're paying on the type of policy. So just as a broker, it's my job to make sure that I can make that up for you elsewhere, or put you in a different type of policy, just depending on what you're looking to do, and what your goal is.
Yeah, that's actually that was, a question of mine. How has the pandemic, influenced the insurance industry?
It's interesting because when it first came out, right, a lot of companies, they didn't really know what to do because, if you remember when that thing first came out, I was afraid to roll the window down. I was driving in the car. I'm like, can I breathe the air right now? Is it safe to breathe? But insurance companies, they were freaking out because they're like, if we take on all of these people like we normally do and everybody dies from COVID at one big time, we could be out of business. They wouldn't really be because it's all reinsurances and all kind of protections from the state and things like that. But yeah, again, high level, that was a big concern for them. And so a lot of them, when the pandemic first broke, they were changing how they were underwriting, what they were approving. People that were normally approved actually were getting declined, depending on the situation. They put a lot of restrictions on who could get coverage, the amount that, not so much the amount, but who could get coverage. And then a lot of places, because life insurance and insurance in general normally is pretty behind the times as far as technology goes, they actually were becoming more online and more technology friendly, which I think worked out better for everybody.
Yeah.
You had places that were still having you do stuff by mail and wet signatures and fax. And these places is funny because now they're like, we have DocuSign now. Like, I think it worked out from that sense for a lot of places to do that. And then, of course, as things have opened up, I'm getting emails now. Companies are saying, hey, we're going back to pre-COVID underwriting. We're lifting these restrictions. And as and all along the way, people and companies were changing.
Yeah, that was my question as well. You're covering it.
I'm still on your steam. I'm sorry.
Yes. So that was my next question. So everyone is wondering, everyone is wondering, what is going to happen in the aftermath, right? So how is, or what is the new norm, for us, and how are we going to be impacted by, the future after the aftermath of the pandemic? What does that look like? What does that look like for you? What does that look like for, entrepreneurs who are looking to be insured? What does that look like for us?
So as far as like the aftermath of the pandemic in relationship to insurance?
Yes.
So, as far as that goes, I think that for life insurance, it pretty much goes back to normal. It's getting back to that point. It has gotten back to that point. I will say, I think it from a consumer perspective, I think that it has allowed for people to be a little more open to making sure that they have things in order, because it has cut off, it has revealed to us some of what the things that we're exposed to. For case in point, one of the things that I coach my clients on is that there's 4 tiers or phases that we help protect against. The first phase is funeral expenses. I think everybody pretty much understands that. We've got the debts that we cover. So making sure that your mid and long-term debts are covered. So if something were to happen to you, God forbid, prematurely, that your significant other or anybody who's dependent upon you that could be negatively impacted by your debts, we will make sure that that's covered as well. The third step we look at is, we'll look at income replacement. And I think that this pandemic really was the closest thing to a simulation of what it looks like to just lose an income abruptly with no preparedness. Like it just hit. And so I think that, if you look at what it looks like with no government, with no unemployment and no stimulus checks, that would be the closest thing. But what happened is, what it looks like if somebody were just to pass prematurely before we were ready, and then the dynamic of what that household income looks like. And I find it funny, I think that, sidebar again, because I know, we could have those a little bit. I feel like, with that whole, it's amazing how we've been trying to get reparations, but all of a sudden, the government can dip in this jar and be like, hey, we've got trillions of dollars to give people. Oh, really? You don't say. The reparation jar, you'll pull out the stimmies and the unemployment checks. Okay.
Exactly.
But anyway, so that, and then the last phase is making sure we protect for retirement and things like that. You can actually utilize life insurance for, and this is good for business owners as well. Utilizing life insurance as a retirement plan, or in addition to your existing retirement plan.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh, wow. I did not know that. I didn't know that it can be used in addition. So it's basically like in an excess.
You get the policy, you pay into it, and over time is we're going to set it up for it to grow for you. And the sexy part about it is it can be used for a tax-free retirement. And basically, it's a great way to basically shell away some extra money that one day you can take money out of at a tax-free rate. So for us, again, and because life insurance is not get rich quick, it is a very slow, long game. And so that's why it's so important for us to take advantage of it while we're younger. We can talk about some of these things while we're younger, while our health is on our side, because if you look at life insurance, it's your health and your age. So the age is on our side and our health is on our side. While we're younger, we can look at some of these things. If you can comfortably put away a car note 20, 30 years from now, when you're talking about retirement, you will be very happy with what happens if you get the right type of policy. So you can do that, and again, have it tax-free versus some of the other options out there where if you pull the money, you're getting taxed on it.
How much money do you think we need to have to live comfortably, baseline, and for retirement?
I think that's relative to your lifestyle that you're looking for. I know, a lot of articles, they push at least $1 million. I think that I'm really big on being practical, because I know that not everybody is going to amass $1 million. I'm not saying it can't happen if you plan properly. Sure, you definitely can if you plan properly. It's not completely unobtainable or as hard as some people may think. The issue is, I keep in mind the person that is a little bit behind or cannot do what they need, may not have the resources to do that. And so keeping that person in mind, I would say put together something that's realistic for you. And don't say, if you make a few $1,000s a month now, you don't go into retirement saying that, I want to live off of $25,000 a month. You know what I mean? Like that's not going to compute. And if to get to that, it's going to be so much money. So I don't know if there's a set number, as it is more so what's practical for the lifestyle that you can afford to get to, but also afford to maintain when you get there. Because you don't want to get to retirement like I got to go back to work the next year because I went through all my money already.
Exactly. Well, most aspiring entrepreneurs are between the ages of 40 I know we covered you cover millennials, but most of entrepreneurs are between 40 and 45. They're corporate innovators. So they have tons of skills. Now they're going into business for the first time. And a lot of individuals started a business last year due to the pandemic. And so, with that, is there still enough time, you think, to still build a robust insurance policy or have it to work for your benefit, being that you're just getting started at business between the ages of 40, 45? Normally, society tells us the clock ends at 65. So we have that 20 to 25 window to invest into our insurance policy. Is there still enough time to build? I'm pretty sure for someone who's younger, 30, younger, by the time they get to 65, it'll be awesome, right? But what are your thoughts on someone who's getting started at the age of 40, between the ages of 40, 45 on looking into life insurance and even, yeah, for life insurance?
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely still achievable. I've actually working with a couple of 40, early 40-year-olds now that are in that phase where they're building their businesses and they're still early on, but they have great aspirations for retirement and things like that. And so you can absolutely still do it as long as, but you have to understand it's not going to be the same price as when you were 20. So,
Right.
so I think that's the biggest thing. But once you get through that and sort that out, I think with the bigger picture in mind, it definitely is still achievable. You still got a ton of time, because 20 years from 40, you're still 60, 60,
Yeah.
65, you're still young. You're still
Yeah.
young. So.
Good you said that because I say the same thing. Hey, when I have younger nieces and nephews, right? And when they ask TT, how old are you? I tell them my age, and they're like, "Oh, you're old," and I'm like, "What?" And I'm sitting there, I'm thinking to myself, "Did I do that to him? Am I getting my karma?" And I'm hearing, so many people feeling like, that they are too old, to achieve some certain things. And I'm like, listen, you're still living. You're never too young as long as you're still living. And I'm so happy to hear that she said 60 to 65 is still young because I too, same thing. Like,
Yeah.
listen, don't
Look,
deprive me of my youth.
right. Right. I feel a certain type of way when they start calling my music classics and stuff like that. I'm like, classic, what are you
Exactly.
talking about? Yeah. So I actually have a very good friend in the industry. This brother is going strong. He's actually really big in the Richmond market, and he's 70. I forget. He said he's like 72, 70. You would never know. I mean, he's out there calling me and we're on phone calls and he's out here doing business development and strategies and trying to figure out how he can grow his business. I mean, and he still's like, I got still a lot ahead of me. And I'm like, you're right. And
I
this
love
man is in
that.
his 70s, So yeah, age ain't nothing but a number.
I say the same thing. Is you're never too old. I guess you're only as old as you think you are. I would
Right.
imagine 60, 65 is still young.
Yeah,
You
take care of
know.
yourself though. That's the key. Take care of yourself.
Yes, I agree. So the goal is to get insurance. The goal is to get it now while we are young. And that way, it would benefit us for the long term. Since insurance is a slow process. It's marathon thinking, obviously.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely.
Okay.
More so, especially with the life insurance. That's a longer, bigger term picture. The other ones, that's more immediate, like the auto, the home, the renters, business, all that other stuff. That's a little bit more in our face now.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Do you have, now we are having events. I'm pretty sure once as the world continues to open back up, we're having events outside. Some of us are still having events outside. And with that, do you have insurance for that too?
Yeah, yeah. There's a couple different ways you can do it. It just depends on your need, how often you're
Okay.
doing the events. But yeah, they have insurance just for specific events. Like if you're having one-offs, you can do that. If you're having multiple events or your organization that's planning events, it may make more sense to get something a little bit different from that. But essentially, yes, you can definitely get coverage for that. And sometimes venues will require you to have it. They won't
Mm,
even let you hold the event, especially if you're working with like a municipality, like a government, like a a city or like a city or state level, they may say, hey, you need to have so much coverage, a certain type of coverage, this, that, and the other. And so that's something you want to knock out.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm sure you let me know if my assessment is right or wrong. Prior to the pandemic, insurance to the Black millennials were at a low. Do you think that after the pandemic, now insurance is becoming a priority?
I think it's become more of a priority because I
Okay.
think it was a lot more realization of what could happen.
Mhm.
And honestly, I think people have more downtime to think about things. And I just say that based off of my personal business and how that's gone, and the conversations I've had and who I've had them with, and just seeing how the dynamics of the households have been adjusted, and there's been realizations like, hey, I need to do this because I think COVID
Mhm.
was a thing, especially in the beginning. When there was so much uncertainty about COVID and who could impact, how it could impact them, things like that. It was just like, hey, that could be me, and that was kind of in everybody's face. So yeah, I think that it's been more priority now.
Absolutely. So you have a son.
I do.
Yes. So you talked about generational wealth early in the conversation. I definitely want to circle back around that. So, when do you think startups should start building towards the generational wealth? And as we were talking about early on, business legacy, when do you think they should start that process?
I mean, it's one of the things that, in planning, in my opinion, you can never plan too soon. I think as early on as soon as you've got that business plan together and you're ready to open your doors, you need to already know 5 to 10 years ahead. What does that look like? Are you planning on like, what's the plan and goal for this company? Is it something that you are going to use as a business legacy? Is this going to be a success? Is there going to be a succession plan? So you need to already be thinking about this before the doors even open, really. As soon as you have that plan together, this needs to be a part of it. But yeah, so when you get that established, you definitely set yourself up, and all the chips kind of fall into place after that. Once you know more of the end goal and down the road.
Awesome. Are you taking your son with you to understand insurance? Is he going to be Insurance Bay Junior?
I would hope so. The option will definitely be there for him. I would love for him to take it over, but we'll see. Either way, I know that I'm building something that he'll eat off of, regardless if he builds it or not. It'll be set up there. It'll be something that will be attached to his name that he will always be able to benefit from, for sure. But as far as like taking him with me, yeah, some I can't take him with me everywhere. I did a conference this past weekend, or maybe 2 weekends ago, whenever it was. I couldn't take him with me to that, but for things like in the community where a lot of times it might be a family friendly event. I may have a table or something, and I'll do my thing, but he'll be right there with me. And so, just the little things, let him get an experience. And he's a people person, so he won't have too many issues with it, for sure.
So I'm pretty sure listeners want to know, why does she keep calling Calvin Insurance Bay? So please tell us a little bit about Insurance Bay. Like, how did you come up with the name?
Okay.
What is it? Tell us.
So it was funny because I was following Prince Donnell and his wife, Donna Chanel, I think. They're on Instagram.
Okay.
And Twitter, and I'm sure, but all that. So I was following them, and Prince Donnell, he has a tax franchise. And so it's evolved, but he essentially was saying that he is going to utilize social media for in every aspect of it to build his business. And I watched him earlier this year build a whole audience on TikTok from scratch and generate business through Instagram. And I said, well, most people have the perception, even myself, of insurance can be boring and it's not sexy. People don't get excited about insurance. People don't even really want to have those conversations. That's not something that comes first to mind unless you're an agent or something. So I said, if somebody can take the tax industry and financial services and insurance, it's kind of all in that same thing together. It's not really sexy, but people want to know about it and need to know about it. If you're able to build a tax franchise through social media, doing these silly TikTok videos, then insurance has a chance. Now, I think to make it, I need to put my own spin on it and have fun with it. And so I was like, well, let me come up with a character. I think that would be a great idea. And so I was thinking of different things that allow me to show my personality outside of business owner. And, I was like, well, I don't think there's Insurance Bay. I know there's Salt Bay, right? And
Yeah.
in Salt Bay, all he does is sprinkle the little, he sprinkles the little salt. That's all he's doing, right? So I'm
right.
like, if that's the thing, well, maybe I can do the same thing with insurance. And so there comes the character Insurance Bay. And then from there, it allows me to have my personality. But I tell you what, Monet, it was so good that I did that because it allowed me to have fun with marketing. For a long time, I dreaded marketing. I did it because I had to. It was a necessity for my company. But it allowed me to have fun while marketing. And at the same time, it's been actually a very profitable thing for me that I was surprised because I didn't know that, it would work out the way it did. But yeah, I'm glad I did it.
Yes. I always say just be your authentic self and people will flock. They will just come to you just based off of your personality. Yes. If you are likable, you have built a brand, let me tell you. That will help with building your brand, being likable. More so, I see than being credible. So yeah, I'm so excited you talked about Insurance Bay because I saw a few of your videos and I'm like, look at Insurance Bay. He has got to come on this show and talk about his persona, Insurance Bay, and more.
Yes.
Yes. What are your top 5 must knows or 5 tips that entrepreneurs need to know when it comes to insurance?
One, it is probably more affordable than you're thinking. Get the education on it. 2, I would say that there are a lot more exposures that or concerns or areas that you may be vulnerable to that may not readily come to mind that is definitely worth discussing and just making sure that even if you don't cover all of them, that you're aware of all of them or more of them at the very least. So being aware of exposures. 3, I would say that especially if you're a startup or a solopreneur, I would say that you want to make sure that you are in a position to where if something were to happen to you, that your company's revenue is protected. So protecting your revenue, protecting your income is very important, especially if you're the direct reason that revenue comes in. The 4th tip I would give you is I would say that if you're a business that's got a few different pieces to it, like a few different moving pieces, like my friend I was talking about earlier, if you're in the early stages, I would talk it through as far as like getting it set up correctly, or in a way that makes it a little bit more affordable for you to get the insurance part figured out. Because some certain things, it may not. For example, I have a client now that we're working with. It's going to cost them, from an insurance perspective, $10,000-$15,000 a year just to get the insurance he needs to run the business. Now, if that's not something that's achievable for you to maintain, maybe this isn't business that we want to do. Now, that's not a normal, like that's not what most of my clients pay. That's, a lot more. It's just the type of business he wants to do and the type of things that he has to get done. So maybe we adjust what we're trying to do, or we just have those conversations. So it doesn't hurt to do some preliminary things if you're waiting out a couple different parts. But some of those things where insurance is required, you may want to do that preliminary research. And then 5, I would say make sure that if you have the means to, I would definitely say look at utilizing insurance for what it's worth in the life insurance perspective, at least when it comes to creative financing, when it comes to capital for your company, when it comes to retirement and exit strategies. That's one of the things that I think is a wide open opportunity for us. If more of our business owners knew about it, and it's not exclusive to business owners, but I find business owners are the ones that are the most drawn to it. But using the life insurance for those type of strategies that can help your company stay afloat in tough times, but also in the long run, you can use it for retirement in a way when you're done building your company, you can go ahead and kick back and relax.
Yeah, that is the goal. You
Yes.
know, we spend a lot of time, energy, our mental building a business. Definitely want to, take a seat during. I always, like to talk about work-life balance while we are building a business. But in the end, once it's all said and done and you passing that business on to someone else through legacy or selling it, we can just, live comfortably like we choose to. Is there a specific industry that requires like an entrepreneur to spend the most, and where there's also an industry where entrepreneurs will spend the least for insurance?
I would say the specialty industries are pretty hard. So the things that aren't nearly as common. I mean, your
Okay.
normal, your normal mom and pop shop, that may not have as much going on. Because sorry, so let me back up a little bit. So one of the big things is revenue, right? So the more that your business is doing as far
Hmm.
as revenue, the great in the insurance company's eyes, they're viewing it as that's a larger exposure, that's a larger risk. There's more chances that if there's going to be claims, this, that, and the other, just because they've got a lot more going on. So
Hmm.
as your revenue grows, your insurance is going to cost more naturally. So an early stage entrepreneur, as I said, affordability is huge because you can, your rate is based off of, what you're doing early on.
Right.
So regardless, as you grow and become those multi-million dollar brands that we all desire to be, your insurance is going to cost more regardless of industry. In the beginning phases, I don't. The best way to probably put it is the more common stuff that we go to is pretty easy to cover. It's very affordable. When we start diving into some stuff that's a little bit harder to come across, you're like, I didn't know that was a thing. Like those things are considered specialty oftentimes, and those ones will cost more.
Okay. What if someone has a partner? How would obtaining a business insurance work?
Wow, yeah. So when it comes to that, there's a few different business owners have their own like package of insurance options, to be honest with you. But early stage, there's one in particular that makes a lot of sense. So it's called key person insurance, and
Okay.
essentially what this says is that the company is going to take a policy out on somebody that's very valuable to them. So let's say, you are amazing at organizing, managing, admin, HR, like you kill it on that side. And I'm over here, I kill it with sales and marketing, and we decide, hey, we want to open up a firm together. Let's put two heads together on it, and when we decide to partner. Well, I'm sure you'd agree that down the road, as we're building this big brand, if something happens to either one of us, the other person is going to really feel that. Essentially, the company is going to really feel a negative impact to that. And it's going to affect the bottom line. And so, what key person insurance says is, well, hey, let's open. We're going to go into a partnership, or whether it be one person, three people, however many, we're going to go into a partnership, and we want to make sure that if something happens to any one of these people, that we have enough revenue to replace their value to the company. So that allows us to hire, because when you start talking about building big brands and things like that, replacing somebody that does something at the level that you do, that may take some time. It may take time to find a VP of operations. It may take time to find a VP of sales and marketing that will offer the same level of value and quality. So having that income stream, or having the ability to be funded in the case that something happens, allows a business to stay afloat, and also make sure that the surviving partner or partners can have time to replace that person.
Yeah. Okay. So it is definitely possible to obtain a business insurance when you do have a partnership going on. And outside of the partnership, are there insurance for nonprofits as well?
Yeah, definitely. I've actually insured a few of them. But yeah, so they they're pretty straightforward. A lot of them, sometimes depending on the dynamic that they're dealing with, that may
Hmm.
determine which direction we have to go, or they may need certain types coverage. But it's not too much different from some of the for-profit organizations.
Okay. Okay. And outside of serving your clients, because we're coming to a close, listeners, it has been awesome as I mentioned to you before, every time we talk, I learn something new. Here I am sitting here writing down as you're talking, learning some new things that I would love to talk to you about beyond today's episode. But outside of serving your clients and TikToking away being insurance bay, what are some things that you enjoy doing?
So for me, I'm a big foodie. So
Okay.
whether I'm going to try somebody's food, I'm cooking it myself. Like I do,
Okay.
if you see my stories every now and again, I throw in something I put together. So I
Okay.
love, definitely a big foodie. I really like open mics. So it's been hard for me, like no live events, no, every now and again I might do a piece myself. I do spoken word, so that's cool. And then sports and gym. I like being active. So lifting weights, playing and watching sports, that's me all day.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you can't be insurance, babe. Not,
Right, right. Gotta look the part too.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Calvin. So tell us, how can listeners contact you beyond today's episode?
Sure. So a new finance. So on Facebook, it'd be at the a new financial, ANEW financial, and then on Instagram and TikTok _ insurance bay. You'll be able to find me on both of those. My personal page is maxed out on friends, so if you can send the invite maybe one day. And LinkedIn, I'm sure Calvin Royster, so you can find me on there.
Awesome. Well, now people can actually just follow you instead of being friends with you. So that is
Oh
awesome.
yeah, there we go.
Hey,
So Calvin Royster.
yep, there you go. So, well, that's it for today. Thank you so much, Calvin, for talking to us and explaining to us that, insurance can be sexy as well as informative.
Yes.
But most of all, letting us know how we can equip ourselves with insurance, business, as well as personal. It's been a pleasure talking to you today, and I've learned so much on today's episode. And I'm sure those who've listened learned so much as well. Be sure to like and follow the Village Project on social media. We're active on YouTube, LinkedIn, Facebook, and Instagram to catch a recap of today's episode. And we're also on Spotify. Leave a comment and let us know your takeaways from today's episode as well. Also, you can subscribe to the emailing list at www.villageproject.net to receive notifications on when new episodes post and so much more. Again, thank you all for listening. Thank you so much, Calvin. And as always, grind hard, but self-care harder.